The principal stared at the security footage in complete disbelief. A wealthy school administrator discovered a quiet scholarship student giving away his only winter coat to a freezing homeless veteran outside the school gates. What happened next was unbelievable. Within hours, the boy was standing in the principal's office, accused of violating school policy, embarrassing the academy, and wearing an improper uniform. His punishment was swift. But no one, not the teachers, not the students, not even the principal, knew why he had made that choice. And when the truth finally came out, the entire school wished they could take back what they had done. Every morning before sunrise, 14-year-old Ethan Brooks woke to the sound of an old radiator that never quite worked. The apartment was so cold that he could see his breath as he sat up on the worn-out couch that doubled as his bed. His mother slept in the tiny bedroom behind a faded curtain. She had worked the night shift cleaning office buildings again and had only gotten home an hour earlier. Ethan quietly folded the blanket his mother always insisted he use. She needed the warmth more than he did. The kitchen contained little more than a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and half a carton of milk. He carefully spread a thin layer across one slice, folded it in half, wrapped it in wax paper, and slipped it into his backpack. Breakfast and lunch combined. He glanced toward the bedroom. "Mom." A tired voice answered. "I'm awake. You don't have to get up." She smiled weakly from behind the curtain. "I always get up to tell my son goodbye." She stepped out wearing slippers that had been stitched together 3 different times. "You've got your science presentation today." "I know. You'll do amazing. What if I mess it up?" She placed her hands on his shoulders. "Ethan, never confuse what you own with what you're worth." Those words had carried him through every difficult day of his life. His father had died in a construction accident when Ethan was 8. Since then, his mother had worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. There were weeks when she skipped meals without saying a word. Ethan always noticed. He simply pretended he didn't. St. Augustine Academy was one of the finest private schools in the state. Towering brick buildings. Perfectly trimmed lawns. Luxury cars lined the morning drop-off lane. Most students arrived carrying designer backpacks and wearing expensive sneakers. Ethan arrived on foot. Every day. His uniform was spotless because his mother washed it by hand every night. His shoes were old enough that the soles had been glued back together twice. His navy winter coat had once belonged to another student years earlier. It had faded patches on both elbows. The zipper stuck halfway. But it was warm. Or warm enough. Most students barely noticed Ethan. Some whispered. Some laughed quietly. Others assumed he was strange because he spent lunch reading library books instead of joining conversations about vacations and new phones. They never realized he simply couldn't afford to join those conversations. What they also didn't realize was that Ethan possessed a remarkable gift. He noticed people everyone else ignored. He thanked cafeteria workers by name. He picked up trash without being asked. He tutored struggling classmates after school without expecting anything in return. When a 6th grader forgot lunch money, Ethan quietly split his own peanut butter sandwich in half. No announcements. No attention. Just kindness. To Ethan, kindness wasn't something special. It was survival. Because he knew exactly what it felt like to need help. One freezing December afternoon, school ended just as dark clouds rolled across the sky. Students rushed toward waiting SUVs. Parents honked impatiently. Drivers opened heated car doors. Ethan adjusted his backpack and began the 2-mile walk home. As he reached the front gate, he noticed an elderly man sitting against the stone wall. His gray beard was covered with tiny snowflakes. His hands trembled violently. The thin jacket he wore offered almost no protection from the bitter wind. Most students walked past without looking. Some looked away on purpose. One boy laughed. He's probably pretending. Another muttered, someone should call security. No one stopped. Except Ethan. He crouched beside the man. Sir, are you okay? The old man forced a smile. I've had better winters. You look freezing. I'll manage. Ethan looked down at his own coat. His mother's words echoed in his heart. Never confuse what you own with what you're worth. Without another thought, he slowly removed the only winter coat he owned. The icy wind instantly pierced through his school uniform. He gently wrapped the coat around the elderly man's shoulders. The man stared in stunned silence. I can't take this. You need it more. But what about you? Ethan smiled. I'll walk fast. The old man's eyes filled with tears. I don't even know your name. Ethan. You've given away the only coat you're wearing. My mom says warmth isn't just something you wear. It's something you give. The old man couldn't speak. He simply reached out and squeezed Ethan's hand. Unbeknownst to both of them, a security camera above the school entrance had recorded every second. And inside the administration building, someone was already watching. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. The next morning, Ethan felt the cold before he even opened his eyes. Without his coat, the walk to school seemed twice as long. The December wind cut through his thin uniform sweater, making his hands ache as he shoved them deep into his pockets. He kept his head down and walked a little faster, hoping no one would notice. But they did. Several students whispered as he crossed the courtyard. Where's his coat? Didn't he have one yesterday? Maybe his family couldn't afford another. Someone chuckled. Guess the scholarship kid finally ran out of luck. Ethan didn't respond. He had learned long ago that silence often carried more dignity than arguments. As he reached his locker, his best friend, Noah Ramirez, hurried over. Noah had met Ethan during 7th grade science club. Unlike many students, he'd never cared how much money Ethan's family had. Ethan, Noah asked quietly, what happened to your coat? Ethan hesitated. I gave it away. You, what? There was a man outside yesterday. The homeless man? Ethan nodded. He looked like he needed it more. Noah stared at him for several seconds. Finally, he smiled. That's the most Ethan thing I've ever heard. You think I'm crazy? No. He laughed softly. I think you're the only person I know who'd freeze before letting someone else suffer. Before Ethan could answer, the loudspeaker echoed through the hallway. Ethan Brooks, please report to the principal's office immediately. Conversation stopped. Students exchanged curious looks. Noah frowned. That's never good. The principal's office felt unusually tense. Principal Margaret Caldwell sat behind her polished oak desk, while Vice Principal Harris stood near the window with folded arms. A tablet rested on the desk. Its screen was paused on a security camera image. There was Ethan, standing beside the elderly man, removing his coat. Principal Caldwell folded her hands. Ethan, do you recognize this footage? Yes, ma'am. So it's true. Yes. Vice Principal Harris spoke sharply. You removed part of your school uniform while on campus. Yes, sir. You gave it to an unauthorized individual outside school grounds. Yes, sir. You understand our policies? I do. Principal Caldwell sighed. Then why would you deliberately ignore them? Ethan looked down for a moment. He needed it. Vice Principal Harris shook his head. That's not the point. No. No. You represented this academy. You created a situation that could have endangered yourself. You embarrassed the school's image by interacting with a stranger. You also arrived today without the required winter uniform. Ethan listened quietly. I understand. Principal Caldwell's expression softened slightly. Ethan, kindness is admirable. But rules exist for everyone's safety. You'll receive 2 days of after-school detention. And you'll need to replace your winter coat immediately. Ethan swallowed. I can't. What do you mean? It's the only one I had. The room became silent. Vice Principal Harris shifted uncomfortably but quickly recovered. Nevertheless, school policy applies equally to everyone. Ethan nodded. I understand. As he stood to leave, Principal Caldwell added gently. I hope you've learned something from this. Ethan looked back. I have. What? He answered with complete sincerity. If someone is cold, I'd still give them my coat. Then he quietly walked out. Neither administrator noticed that neither pride nor anger filled his voice. Only conviction. By lunchtime, the story had spread across the entire school. Students exaggerated every detail. He got punished for helping someone. I heard he was suspended. No, detention. They said he embarrassed the academy. Others saw things differently. He should have followed the rules. What if that man was dangerous? It wasn't his responsibility. The debate divided classrooms, lunch tables, and even teachers. English teacher Mrs. Patel overheard several students discussing it. She smiled thoughtfully. Sometimes the hardest decisions involve choosing between rules and compassion. One student raised his hand. So which one is more important? Mrs. Patel looked out the window before answering. The best people find a way to honor both. That afternoon, Ethan served his first detention. The room was quiet except for the ticking clock. About 30 minutes later, the classroom door opened. To Ethan's surprise, Principal Caldwell entered carrying a cardboard box. She placed it gently on his desk. I was cleaning the lost and found. Inside lay several winter coats. Some looked nearly new. These were never claimed. You may choose one. Ethan looked at the coats. Then back at the principal. They're really free. Yes. For anyone who needs them. He smiled politely. Thank you. He carefully picked the oldest one in the box. Principal Caldwell noticed. You don't want the newer one. Ethan shook his head. Someone else might need that one more. For the first time, the principal truly looked at him, not as a student who had broken a rule, but as a young man whose instincts consistently placed others before himself. She found herself wondering. Who had raised a boy like this? The following morning, Ethan arrived wearing his replacement coat. It fit a little too large, but it was warm. As he approached the front entrance, he noticed someone standing near the school gate. It was the elderly man. He looked healthier. Cleaner. And this time, he wasn't alone. A middle-aged woman in business attire stood beside him. The moment the old man spotted Ethan, his face lit up. There he is. He hurried over. Ethan. The boy smiled warmly. I'm glad you're okay. The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out Ethan's old navy blue coat. It had been professionally cleaned. The zipper had been repaired. The torn elbows had been carefully stitched. I wanted to return this. Ethan blinked. You fixed it. I couldn't return kindness without improving it. The woman beside him smiled. My father insisted. Father? The elderly man chuckled. I suppose I owe you an explanation. My name is Thomas Whitmore. I served in the Army for 32 years. After my wife passed away, I lost more than my home. I lost myself. My daughter finally found me yesterday. The woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening. If Ethan hadn't stopped, I don't know if I would have found my father alive. She reached into her handbag and carefully removed a small envelope. Please. It's only a small thank you. Ethan immediately stepped back. I can't accept money. It isn't charity, she said gently. It's gratitude. Ethan smiled kindly but shook his head. My mom says kindness isn't something you sell. It's something you pass on. Thomas Whitmore's eyes filled with tears once again. At that exact moment, Principal Caldwell happened to walk outside. She froze. She had expected to see the same homeless man from the security footage. Instead, she witnessed something entirely different. A decorated veteran. His grateful daughter. And the student she had punished. Refusing a reward for doing the right thing. For the first time since the incident, a painful question settled into her heart. Had the school disciplined the wrong person? Principal Margaret Caldwell couldn't stop thinking about Ethan Brooks. For 23 years, she had enforced rules with consistency, believing that fairness meant treating every student exactly the same. But fairness? Was it really the same as justice? That question lingered in her mind long after the school day ended. When she arrived home that evening, she replayed the security footage once more. Not because she needed evidence, but because she was looking for something she had missed. This time, she noticed details that had escaped her before. Ethan hadn't looked around to see if anyone was watching. He hadn't pulled out a phone. He hadn't expected applause. He simply saw someone in need, and acted. She paused the video just as Ethan wrapped the coat around Mr. Whitmore's shoulders. Then she whispered to herself. How many adults would have done the same? Meanwhile, Ethan's life continued exactly as it always had. The next morning, he woke before dawn, prepared breakfast, and quietly ironed his school uniform while his mother slept. As he buttoned his shirt, she emerged from behind the curtain. How's detention? He smiled faintly. I survived. She looked at him carefully. You don't sound upset. I'm not. She frowned. You were punished for helping someone. I know. Doesn't that bother you? Ethan thought for a moment. If I had to choose again, I'd still give him my coat. His mother smiled with tears in her eyes. I wish your father could hear you say that. So do I. She reached into a kitchen drawer and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed Ethan's father wearing an old firefighter's uniform. He once carried a stranger out of a burning apartment. Ethan looked at the picture. Was he scared? Terrified. So why did he do it? She smiled. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing someone else's safety before your own. Ethan carefully placed the photograph back into the drawer. Maybe. Kindness ran in the family. At school, something unexpected began happening. Students who had barely spoken to Ethan before started sitting beside him during lunch. One afternoon, a freshman named Lily nervously approached his table. Can I ask you something? Of course. Were you really cold after giving away your coat? He laughed softly. Very. Were you scared? A little. So why'd you do it? Ethan shrugged. I kept thinking. If I walked away, I'd stay warm. But I'd feel cold inside. Lily smiled. My grandma always says that. She sounds wise. By the end of the week, more students joined the conversation. Not because Ethan was popular. Because he was genuine. For the first time, many students realized kindness could be contagious. Even some teachers noticed the change. Mrs. Patel introduced a classroom challenge. For the next 30 days, she announced, I want each of you to perform one anonymous act of kindness. No grades. No prizes. No recognition. Just do something good. Within days, small changes spread through the school. Someone secretly paid another student's cafeteria balance. A janitor found handwritten thank you notes taped to his cleaning cart. The librarian discovered flowers left on her desk with no signature. Students who had once ignored each other now held doors open. Shared notes. Offered encouragement. The atmosphere slowly shifted. Nobody officially connected it to Ethan. But everyone knew where it had started. Not everyone appreciated the change. Vice Principal Harris certainly didn't. During a faculty meeting, he voiced his concerns. This entire situation has become a distraction. A student knowingly violated policy. And now people are treating him like a hero. One teacher spoke up. Maybe because he acted heroically. The issue isn't kindness, Harris replied. It's discipline. If students begin deciding which rules deserve obedience, we'll have chaos. Principal Caldwell remained unusually quiet. Finally, she said. Perhaps. But perhaps we should also examine whether some rules need compassion. The room fell silent. It was the first time anyone had heard her question school policy. A few days later, another obstacle appeared. The school's Board of Governors requested a formal review of the incident. Several wealthy parents had complained. One letter read. Acts like Ethan's encourage students to approach strangers. The school should have enforced even stricter consequences. Another stated. Our academy's reputation is built on professionalism, not emotional decision-making. Principal Caldwell read every complaint. Then she came across one final letter. It had no return address. Inside was a simple handwritten note. If schools punish compassion, they shouldn't be surprised when compassion disappears. She stared at the sentence for several minutes. The following week, Ethan received another surprise. His mother called during lunch. Ethan. Her voice sounded shaken. Are you okay? I lost my second job. His heart dropped. What happened? The company downsized. I'm sorry. So am I. She forced a laugh. We'll figure something out. But Ethan knew what those words really meant. More overdue bills. More skipped meals. More uncertainty. That evening, he found her sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by unpaid envelopes. She quickly covered them when he entered. You shouldn't worry about grown-up problems. He sat beside her. There are problems. She smiled sadly. I've always wanted to give you more. You already have. What? The kind of heart money can't buy. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Neither noticed the tears forming in the other's eyes. The next day, Ethan seemed quieter than usual. Noah noticed immediately. You okay? My mom lost her job. I'm sorry. We'll manage. You always say that. Because we always do. Noah thought for a moment before speaking. My dad owns a hardware store. So. We're looking for someone to organize inventory after school. Ethan shook his head. I appreciate it. But I already have detention twice this week. I'll ask if they'll wait. Noah. Friends help friends. Ethan smiled. I know. But thank you. That afternoon, Noah secretly told his parents everything. Not just about the job. About Ethan. The coat. His family. The veteran. His mother's struggles. By evening. The story had traveled farther than either boy could have imagined. Across town, Thomas Whitmore sat quietly in his daughter's living room. The repaired navy blue coat rested neatly across the arm of a chair. He couldn't stop thinking about the boy who had expected nothing in return. His daughter looked up from her laptop. Dad? I've been making a few phone calls. About what? Ethan. Thomas smiled. I had a feeling you would. She turned the computer screen toward him. On it was St. Augustine Academy's website. Beside it, a list of school board members, business leaders, community organizations, and one name that immediately caught Thomas's attention. The chairman of the school's board of governors. An old friend. Thomas leaned back slowly. I think, he said with quiet determination, it's time someone reminded that school what education is really supposed to teach. The biggest test of St. Augustine Academy was no longer about one student's actions. It was about the values the school itself chose to uphold. 3 days later, every member of the Board of Governors gathered inside St. Augustine Academy's historic assembly hall. Principal Caldwell sat near the front, reviewing her notes one last time. Vice Principal Harris appeared confident. Several influential parents occupied the first 2 rows. Rumors had spread quickly through the school. Some students believed Ethan was about to lose his scholarship. Others thought the board intended to make an example out of him. Ethan knew none of it. He had been told only that he and his mother were expected to attend an afternoon meeting. As they entered the auditorium, his mother nervously straightened the sleeves of her inexpensive sweater. She whispered, "Whatever happens, remember who you are." Ethan smiled. "I will." The chairman of the board, William Harper, stepped onto the stage. "We are here today to review an incident involving one of our students." A hush settled over the room. Before he could continue, the rear doors opened. Everyone turned. An elderly man walked in wearing a neatly pressed navy suit. Rows of military ribbons decorated his chest. Beside him walked his daughter. Many people failed to recognize him immediately. But Ethan did. Mr. Thomas Whitmore smiled warmly. He no longer looked like the broken man who had sat shivering outside the school gate. He stood tall. Confident. Restored. Chairman Harper's face lit up. "Thomas." The 2 men embraced. "You came. I wouldn't have missed this." The audience exchanged puzzled glances. Vice Principal Harris leaned toward another administrator. "Who is he?" Before anyone answered, Chairman Harper addressed the room. "For those who may not know, Colonel Thomas Whitmore served our country for over 3 decades. He also happens to be one of this academy's oldest alumni." A wave of surprise spread through the audience. Thomas stepped to the podium. His voice was calm but powerful. "A few weeks ago, I believed I had become invisible. I had lost my wife. My home. My hope. I sat outside these gates because I didn't know where else to go." He paused. Hundreds of people walked past. No one stopped. Then he smiled toward Ethan. Except one boy. Every eye turned toward Ethan. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't ask what mistakes I'd made. He didn't wonder whether I deserved help. He simply noticed another human being who was cold. Thomas held up Ethan's repaired navy blue coat. "This coat probably cost less than many families here spend on lunch. But to me, it was priceless." Silence filled the hall. "You punished that boy. You disciplined compassion. And yet, he has never once complained." Chairman Harper stood once more. "I've reviewed the security footage. I've reviewed school policy. And I've reviewed our mission statement." He slowly read the words engraved beneath the Academy's crest. "Character before achievement." He looked around the room. "I have one question. If this isn't character, what exactly are we teaching?" No one answered. Principal Caldwell quietly stood. She walked across the stage until she stood beside Ethan. Then, in front of every student, teacher, and parent, she spoke words no one expected. "Ethan, I owe you an apology." Her voice trembled. "When I disciplined you, I believed I was protecting our standards. I now realize you were protecting something far more important. Our humanity." She extended her hand. "I am deeply sorry." Ethan looked surprised. Then he shook her hand. "You don't have to apologize." "Yes," she replied softly. "I do." The entire auditorium rose to its feet. Applause echoed through the building. Some teachers wiped away tears. Students who had once mocked Ethan now clapped harder than anyone. Even Vice Principal Harris slowly stood. Though reluctant at first, he applauded too. Chairman Harper smiled. This academy was founded to develop leaders. Leadership begins with courage. He turned toward Ethan. "Therefore, effective immediately. Your disciplinary record will be cleared." Another round of applause erupted. "But that isn't all." He looked toward Thomas Whitmore. Thomas nodded. "My late wife and I established an education foundation many years ago. It has supported students who demonstrate exceptional character." He smiled. "Until today. We had never found someone who truly represented its purpose." He handed Ethan a folder. Inside was a letter. A full scholarship. Not just through high school, but through university. Including books, housing, living expenses. Everything. Ethan stared at the pages. His hands shook. He couldn't speak. His mother covered her mouth. Tears streamed freely down her face. This changes everything." Thomas smiled. "No." He gently placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You changed everything." News of the story spread beyond the academy within days. Local newspapers covered it. Television stations interviewed students. Social media overflowed with comments praising Ethan's quiet courage. But the biggest change happened inside St. Augustine Academy itself. Principal Caldwell introduced a new initiative called the Kindness Project. Every student would complete community service each semester. Teachers received training focused not only on discipline but also on empathy. A winter coat drive filled the school gymnasium with thousands of donated coats. Students volunteered at shelters. Parents joined food distribution programs. The academy became known not only for academic excellence, but for compassionate leadership. One simple decision had transformed an entire culture. 6 years passed. Snow once again covered the sidewalks outside St. Augustine Academy. A sleek sedan pulled into the visitors' parking lot. A young man stepped out. He wore a tailored coat and carried himself with quiet confidence. It was Ethan. Now a university graduate studying pediatric medicine, he had returned as the keynote speaker for the Academy's annual day of service. Students gathered eagerly inside the auditorium. Many had heard the famous story. Few had ever met him. As Ethan finished his speech, a volunteer rushed over. "There's someone outside asking for help." Without hesitation, Ethan excused himself. Near the school gate sat a young teenage boy. His jacket was much too thin for the freezing weather. The boy tried to hide his trembling. Ethan recognized the look immediately. Years ago, that had been him. Without saying a word, he removed his own warm coat. The boy looked up. "I can't take this." Ethan smiled. "I once said something to a man that changed my life." He gently wrapped the coat around the boy's shoulders. "My mother taught me. Warmth isn't just something you wear. It's something you give." As Ethan walked back toward the school in the falling snow, he noticed Principal Caldwell watching from the entrance. She smiled through tears. The circle had finally been completed. One boy's kindness had become a legacy that would warm countless lives for generations to come. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments. Winter gave way to spring, and spring eventually welcomed another school year. But at St. Augustine Academy, people often said there were two eras. Before Ethan Brooks. And after Ethan Brooks. The story of the boy who gave away his only coat was no longer just a story whispered in hallways. It had become part of the school's identity. Every new student heard it during orientation. Not because Ethan had earned perfect grades. Not because he had won every competition. But because he had reminded an entire community that character is revealed in the choices no one expects you to make. Ethan kept his promise to himself. The full scholarship allowed him to attend one of the country's top universities, where he studied pediatric medicine. People often asked him why he wanted to become a doctor. His answer never changed. When someone is hurting, the first thing they need isn't a lecture. They need someone who cares enough to stop. His professors quickly noticed that Ethan had a rare gift. He remembered every patient's name. He spoke gently with frightened children. He sat beside anxious parents even after his shift had ended. One senior physician once told him, "Medicine can heal the body. But compassion heals people." Ethan smiled. "I learned that long before medical school." Back in their small apartment, life changed in ways Ethan's mother had hardly dared to imagine. With the burden of tuition lifted, she no longer had to work two exhausting jobs. Instead, she accepted a daytime position at a neighborhood library, where she helped children discover a love for reading. She often laughed when parents thanked her. "I didn't teach kindness," she would say. "I simply tried to live it." The apartment that had once echoed with worry slowly filled with peace. The overdue bills disappeared. The refrigerator stayed full. The old couch that had served as Ethan's bed was finally replaced with a real one. Yet despite the changes, some things never changed at all. Every evening before dinner, mother and son still asked each other the same question. "Who did you help today?" Sometimes the answer was small. "I carried groceries for an elderly neighbor." "I stayed late to comfort a nervous patient." "I helped a classmate study." Neither believed kindness had to be dramatic. Consistency mattered more than applause. Principal Margaret Caldwell experienced a transformation of her own. She often admitted that Ethan had taught her one of the greatest lessons of her career. During educational conferences, she shared the story, not to celebrate the school, but to confess its mistake. She would tell audiences, "Rules are essential. But rules without compassion can unintentionally punish the very values we're trying to teach." Her presentations inspired administrators across the country to review policies that discouraged empathy or discouraged students from helping others. Several schools even introduced what became known as compassion recognition programs, celebrating students for quiet acts of service rather than only academic or athletic achievements. Principal Caldwell kept one special item in her office. Framed beneath glass was a photograph of an old navy blue coat. Below it, a simple plaque read, "Character is what you choose when no one expects you to choose kindness." Every student who entered her office noticed it. Many asked about it. She always smiled before telling the story. As for Thomas Whitmore, he found something he thought he had lost forever. Purpose. With the encouragement of his daughter, he established the Warm Hearts Initiative, a nonprofit organization that partnered with schools, churches, veterans groups, and local businesses to provide winter clothing, food, and emergency assistance to struggling families. Whenever reporters asked what inspired the organization, Thomas would simply hold up a photograph of Ethan. "This young man reminded me that hope often arrives wearing ordinary clothes." Within 5 years, the initiative had distributed tens of thousands of winter coats across communities that needed them most. Volunteers came from every background imaginable. Teachers, students, police officers, business owners, retired veterans. Entire neighborhoods began organizing annual coat drives, proving that one generous act could inspire thousands more. The ripple effect continued far beyond anything Ethan could have imagined. Noah Ramirez also found his calling. Inspired by his friend's unwavering compassion, he studied engineering and eventually started a company that designed affordable, energy-efficient heating systems for low-income housing. At the opening of his first community housing project, a reporter asked what motivated him. He smiled. "I spent years watching my best friend care about people before he cared about himself." "That changes you." The reporter nodded. "So your inspiration was one moment?" "No," Noah replied. "It was a lifetime of small moments." Years later, on one particularly cold December evening, Ethan finished his shift at the children's hospital. As he walked toward his car, he noticed a young girl standing beside her mother outside a bus stop. The little girl's coat was much too thin. She wrapped her tiny arms around herself, trying to stay warm. Without hesitation, Ethan opened his trunk. Inside were several brand-new winter coats in different sizes. He made it a habit to keep them there every winter. Just in case. He approached carefully. "I hope you don't mind. I carry these for moments exactly like this." The mother looked embarrassed. "We can't pay you. I'm not asking you to." The little girl slipped into the warm coat and smiled so brightly that Ethan was instantly reminded of another freezing winter day many years before. As he walked away, he heard the little girl ask, "Mommy, why would a stranger do something so nice?" Her mother answered softly, "Because someone probably once did it for him." Ethan paused for just a moment. Then he looked toward the snow-covered sky. His mother's words echoed once again. "Never confuse what you own with what you're worth." She had been right all along. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. The greatest heroes rarely wear capes. Most never become famous. They don't wait until they're wealthy. They don't wait until life is perfect. They simply notice someone who is hurting. And choose to care. Sometimes that means sharing a meal. Sometimes it means listening to someone who feels invisible. Sometimes it means offering encouragement when everyone else has given up. And sometimes it means giving away the only coat you own because another person needs it more. The truth is, kindness is one of the few things in life that grows every time we give it away. One act inspires another. One compassionate decision creates another. One person becomes a ripple that reaches lives they may never even meet. You may never know the full impact of a single generous choice. But someone else will. Perhaps years from now. Perhaps generations from now. Never underestimate the difference you can make simply by stopping, noticing, and choosing compassion. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video, it helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you don't have to change the whole world in a single day. You only have to change one person's world today. Sometimes. That is how the whole world begins to change.